Am I recording? Hello again, it's me Chaz back with another video. This is my second video of the best and worst series I'm doing. So I picked the 5 best teams I believe had a good World Cup qualifiers for the month, which would have been October. So this video is a bit overdue. And I also picked the 5 nations I believe who didn't have a good World Cup qualifiers during the October break. So back in September, I listed 5 teams that had good performances and 5 teams that had bad performances. So as you could see, I had Japan as one of the teams that had the best performance, and China had the team that had the worst performance back in that September international break. So this video do the same, but for the October international break. So I'm going to start with the nation that I believe had one of the worst performances during the October international break for the World Cup qualifiers. But there are 4 nations that I believe had worse performances than they did. So at number 5, that would have to be Palestine, who are currently last in Group B. They lost to Iraq on match day 3, 1-0. Though on match day 4, they were able to rescue a point against Kuwait right at the end. But Palestine's last win was back in Group I, round 2, where they beat Bangladesh 1-0 with only 2 points in the last 4 games and moving from 5th to now 6th bottom in the table in Group B. They probably won't qualify for the next World Cup, at least in 1st or 2nd. Palestine will go up against Oman next, and then they will play South Korea on match day 6. Previously, Palestine was able to get a great result against South Korea, getting a point from them 0-0 in South Korea. They need to try and find a way to get at least a win from one of those 2 games to at least put them in 3rd or 4th to have another chance to qualify for the World Cup by reaching the round 4. Okay, that was my 5th team on the worst section. Now moving to the best, we're going to go over to the OFC, the Oceania. And Vanuatu is 5th on a nation that I believe had a great performance during the international break in October. They defeated Samoa, who were able to qualify for the World Cup qualifiers in the OFC. Vanuatu defeated Samoa 4-1 and now are top of their group. The top 2 teams will qualify for the 3rd round, the knockout rounds for the OFC qualifiers. Vanuatu will be going up against New Zealand next, and then Tahiti. Both of those games will be played in New Zealand. And next week, we would know if Vanuatu has reached the 3rd round. For now, they're in a great position. All right, now we'll go back to the teams that I believe played poorly. So 4th, that would be Kuwait. Kuwait started match day 3, being 4th in Group B, would mean they would reach round 4. But now Kuwait are out of the 4th place and they moved into 5th, which would mean they would be eliminated if after match day 10 they were still in 5th. Kuwait lost to Oman 4-0 on match day 3. And then right at the end, they ended up drawing to Palestine 2-2. So now Kuwait are 5th in Group B, right above Palestine by a point. Kuwait's got another tough 2 games. They're playing South Korea and Jordan, who are first and second in Group B. Kuwait did play Jordan earlier on match day 1, where they drew 1-1. So it's looking tough for Kuwait if they're going to qualify for the World Cup. It's been 40 years since Kuwait qualified for the World Cup. The last time they qualified was in 1982 in Spain. Okay, let's go to the positives again. So 4th place in a nation that I believe played well during the October international break for the World Cup qualifiers. Paraguay will be 4th. Originally, they were 7th place before match day 9 started, which is the playoff spot for the CONMEBOL in the World Cup qualifiers. They were able to move up 1 space and now 6th, which means once match day 18 comes and finishes, polls, Paraguay would qualify for the World Cup. They played the 2 nations that were around them. They drew with Ecuador 0-0, but was able to beat Venezuela 2-1, pushing them to 6th spot. Now they have a tough game. Next, they will be going up against Argentina at home, though. Argentina being the champions. And Argentina did previously beat them the last time they played each other during the qualifiers, defeating them 1-0. And then they have another tough game playing Bolivia away. And Bolivia are very strong at home. Paraguay are now a point above Bolivia, though. And that's a 6-pointer there. And 2 points above Venezuela, who are outside the World Cup qualifying position. Paraguay hasn't competed at the World Cup since 2010 in South Africa, which was their best performance, reaching the quarterfinals. They are one of the 13 nations to compete at the very first World Cup and will be hosting an anniversary match for the 2030 World Cup. All right, gotta have to go back to the negative. So now 3rd, nations that I believe played poorly during the October international break. That would have to be North Korea, who are currently last in Group A. They did manage to get a late equaliser against United Arab Emirates, but then at the time lost to the nation that was bottom of the table in Group A, Kyrgyzstan, losing to them 1-0, which now meant that North Korea are now bottom of Group A. North Korea have a tough 2 games against Iran and then Uzbekistan, who are first and second in their group. Both Iran and Uzbekistan have won most of their matches. The only time that Iran and Uzbekistan haven't won a game is when they've been playing each other. So again, very tough for North Korea. Even if they were to draw to both of these teams, it still won't be enough. Similar to Paraguay, the last times North Korea have qualified for the World Cup was in 2010, which they were in the bottom of their group and had a lot of poor results there, losing all 3 of their games. So it looks like they will miss out on another World Cup. Okay, let's move on to the positive again. So 3rd, on the good side, that would be Brazil. Brazil started match day 9 being 5th, and they moved up 1 spot, now being 4th. They defeated Chile 2-1 and then Peru 4-0. Now, even though Brazil has had a shaky World Cup qualifiers, This was the first time since match day 1 and 2 back in the September 2023 international break that Brazil were able to win 2 games in a row during qualifiers. And yes, even though this was against the bottom 2 teams, Chile and Peru, they are now 4th, equal points with Uruguay, who are 3rd, 3 points behind Colombia, and 6th behind Argentina. But the top 6 teams will qualify for the World Cup in 2026. And Brazil being in 4th, being now 4 points ahead of 7th place Bolivia. Being in 4th now, they're pretty much more in a better position to qualify for the World Cup. Brazil will be going up against Venezuela, who are currently 8th. The last time those 2 nations played each other was a 1-1 draw in qualifiers, and after that game, Brazil will be going up against Uruguay, who are currently 3rd, as I mentioned, level on points with Brazil. The last time Uruguay and Brazil played each other during World Cup qualifiers, Uruguay defeated them 2-0. So the 5-time champions, Brazil, are 3rd on my list of good. All right, it's back to the worst teams. So 2nd on the list, unfortunately, that would have to be Indonesia, who originally at the beginning of match day 3, they were 4th, and after the end of match day 4, have unfortunately dropped out of the World Cup positions to qualify for at least the 4th round, and they are now 5th. I mentioned before in a couple of videos about the way they drew to Bahrain at the end. Horrible refereeing, which cost them more extra time than was needed in the game. But against China, losing 2-1, and China were bottom of the table at the time, still are, but only by goal difference. Indonesia really needed to win that game. If they did win that one, they would have moved into 2nd, which is the qualifying spot, places, I should say, for the World Cup. Unfortunately, they couldn't do that, and China was able to get their first win. Indonesia will have to go up against Japan, who did drop a point against against Australia, but Japan's still strongest team in this region based on the qualifiers. And then they will go up against Saudi Arabia, who they did get a 1-1 draw against them back in match day 1. Still not all lost hope. They still got a lot of chances to still qualify. Group C are pretty close between 2nd to 6th. Only Japan stands out the most in that group. Indonesia were the very first Asian nation to compete at the World Cup all the way back in 1938. Unfortunately, they haven't been able to qualify for a World Cup since then. Hopefully, this will be different for them. All right, back to the positive. We're going to go 2nd, and the 2nd nation that I believe played well. And surprisingly, they're one of only 2 nations that have made the list from the first video I made on the best and worst. And that nation was Australia, who originally on the list, they were 2nd worst. And now they're the 2nd best because they were able to beat China 3-1 at home and then managed to get a point and be the first nation to get a goal against Japan when they drew with them 1-1. With those 2 results, that made Australia move from 5th to now 2nd, which is a World Cup qualifying spot. So great results for them. They will be going up against Saudi Arabia next, who are 3rd in the table. So that's a big 6-pointer then. And then they will go up against Bahrain. Bahrain originally defeated them, was a surprise 1-0. And that was in Australia. So this time around, Australia will be travelling to Bahrain to avenge that defeat. If Australia do qualify for the World Cup in 2026, that will be 6 World Cups in a row, continuing their longest run of World Cups they have qualified for. The last World Cup, they were defeated by the champions Argentina 2-1 in the round of 16. Alright, now the team that I believe has done the worst during the October World Cup qualifiers international break. And they were on the worst list last time, being third. This time I have put them as first. And unfortunately, that would be Chile. Chile lost at home to Brazil 2-1. They were leading, but late on, Brazil was able to defeat them. And then they lost to Colombia 4-0 away. At the beginning of match day 10, Chile were 9th. Now they've dropped to 10th. That is bottom of the table in the CONMEBOL. And it looks like they will not qualify for the next World Cup. They will be playing Peru next, who are just above them. The last time they did play Peru, they were able to defeat them 2-0. But then they'll be going up against Venezuela, who defeated them the last time they played each other in the World Cup qualifiers 3-0. Chile hasn't qualified for the World Cup since 2014, missing out on the last 2. They reached a round of 16 in that tournament. Chile would need to do a lot to try and qualify for the World Cup. Well, as it looks like, they will miss out on the 3rd World Cup in a row for them. Outside of the 3 South American nations that have won the World Cup, Brazil, Argentina and Uruguay, Chile has come closer than any of the other nations, finishing 3rd in the 1962 World Cup, which they hosted. Okay, now we'll move on to the best nation I believe had the best performance of the October break, and that will be South Korea, who are currently top of Group B. Originally, they were 2nd during match day 3 of the AFC World Cup qualifiers round 3. They were able to beat Jordan and Iraq. They beat Jordan 2-0 away and beat Iraq 3-2 at home. Both Jordan and Iraq will most likely be their competition in their group, and being able to defeat both of those 2 nations the way they did, great result for them. They're 3 points above both of them, now first in the table. Their next 2 games will be against Kuwait and Palestine, who are the bottom 2 teams in their group. So looking like they probably will get maximum points from those matches. With that said, the last time they did play Palestine, which they were at home, Palestine got a draw against South Korea. I believe there is a possibility if South Korea do win the next 2 games, they will guarantee be finishing at least in 4th, which means they would have another chance to qualify for the World Cup if it goes bad for them, but I don't think it will. South Korea have the longest streak of any Asian team when it comes to qualifying for World Cups. They have been qualifying for World Cups since 1986. This is 10 times now. If they do qualify again, that will be 11 times. And they have reached further than any other Asian team at the World Cup, finishing 4th, reaching the semi-finals of the 2002 World Cup, which they co-hosted with Japan. The 2022 World Cup, they reached the round of 16 where they were defeated by Brazil. All right, then, we're going to look on the tables. Just have a look on some of the tables. Just check with the worst. So the fifth and fourth team, both Palestine and Kuwait, are in the same group with each other. They look like they'll probably be fighting, competing for that fourth spot if they were going to qualify for the next World Cup. At least get into the fourth round. But I highly doubt they'll both qualify for the fourth round of qualifiers. All right, still sticking to the AFC, third and the worst. That is North Korea. They're bottom of Group A, as you can see. Again, they themselves will most likely be competing for third or fourth, having another chance to qualify for the World Cup. But those top two positions, highly doubt they'll get there. And again, still in AFC, the second team that I unfortunately thought they played poorly was Indonesia. Again, I think they got unlucky for the most part. But they're in Group C. There's still a chance that they could qualify in second and be able to qualify outright for the 2026 World Cup. Only 2 points behind Australia, who are second. And we move region and we'll go to South America in the CONMEBOL. And we have Chile, who are bottom of their table. From how it looks like to me, if they have any chance of qualifying, it would just be through the playoffs. And even then, that's looking like a long shot for them. Right, let's move on to the tables for the teams that I believe played well, the best. All right, so now in the Oceania, the OFC, I've got Vanuatu, who are top in their group. So I mentioned next week we'll be able to find out if Vanuatu have made it through to the knockout rounds of the OFC. Currently top, they are playing New Zealand next, who are second to them. I think whoever wins that will qualify for the next round. All right, now back to the CONMEBOL. And as you can see with Paraguay and Brazil. So that's my fourth and third best teams. Paraguay in sixth and Brazil in fourth. They're both in positions to qualify for the World Cup, though Paraguay a little closer to dropping out and Brazil being a lot more comfortable at this point in time. Of course, still a lot of work to be done by both teams. Back to the AFC on my second nation that's done well. That is Australia, who are now second. Still got a lot of work to be done, of course. It's really close between having a spot to flat out qualify for the World Cup, being able to qualify for the fourth round and have another chance to get into the World Cup, and of course being eliminated completely. So though they're second, it's still a lot of work to be done for Australia. Their next game is against Saudi Arabia, who are third. So a massive 6-pointer there. And finally, South Korea, who are top of the group in Group B, 3 points ahead of both Jordan and Iraq. I would say all three of these nations will be competing for the first and second spot. And I do believe, regardless of whoever finishes third between those three teams, I do think in the fourth round, they most likely qualify. So I think in this group, at least three of these nations will qualify anyway. All right, now let's have a look at the fixtures for the teams. So the AFC are going to be on match day 5, I believe. The CONMEBOL are now heading towards match day 11, and the OFC would be heading to match day 2. So these are all the fixtures for the best and worst teams. South Korea will take on Kuwait. So that's the best team, I believe. during the October break will take on the fourth worst team, I believe, performance-wise. Australia will take on Saudi Arabia. Second versus third in Group C. Brazil will take on Venezuela. Paraguay will go up against Argentina. And Vanuatu will take on New Zealand. That's first versus second in that group. Chile will take on Peru, 9th against 10th in the CONMEBOL. Indonesia will take on top of the table Japan in Group C. Top versus bottom in Group A. North Korea will go up against Iran. And finally, Palestine will take on Oman in Group B. Right, I'm going to do one more thing. Quick prediction on each team if I believe they will qualify for the World Cup or not. Let's start with the best first, South Korea, definitely, I think they top their group. I don't even think they finished second. I think they'll top that group. Australia, I kind of wrote them out earlier, the last time I did a video. I think they qualify with Japan. I'll say they get that second spot. Yeah, I'll give that to Australia now. Brazil will qualify. Paraguay, on the other hand, you know what? I think Paraguay will qualify as well now. I do. I don't think they'll finish 7th in that playoff spot. I think they will get 6th. Maybe they could push for 5th, but I think they will qualify. Vanuatu, I still think New Zealand are probably the strongest in that region. It depends what Vanuatu does against New Zealand, but with only one spot. If Vanuatu don't qualify flat out, I don't see them qualifying through the playoffs. So unfortunately, great start for them, but I don't think Vanuatu will qualify for the next World Cup. Palestine, no, I don't think Palestine will qualify. Same goes for Kuwait. I think both of them will stay 5th and 6th. I don't think either of them will qualify. Same goes for North Korea. I don't think North Korea will break into at least the 4th round positions. Indonesia, I think there's still a chance for Indonesia to finish in the 3rd or 4th, so the 4th round position. I think Indonesia will still just about get there. Now, depends on which group they go up against in round 4. I'm not sure, but if they do qualify, it'll probably be through the 4th round qualifiers. And finally, Chile, I think they're going to miss out again. I'm sure they will miss out on another World Cup. They will not qualify for this one. So that leaves them with probably 2030. All right, then. That's the end of this video. Thank you for watching, listening. Hopefully I could try and get this video out before match day 11 of the CONMEBOL, match day 5 of the 3rd round of the AFC, and match day 2 of the 2nd round of the OFC starts up. All right, thanks for listening, watching. Like the video, and bye.